versus CJ Baker, and I recently decided to listen to an album a day that appears in the book 1001 albums you must hear before you die. And each album is selected by a random generator. So I decided that every week I'm going to also record a recap video. So the video will be mostly a compilation of the 7 reviews I did throughout the week. But because the reviews were posted as shorts, I was limited to 3 minutes. So some of the reviews might be expanded a bit. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give an updated rating of all the albums that I listened to from best to worst. So we'll just get right into it. So hopefully you enjoy the video. If you want me to keep making these videos, like and subscribe. So the first album selected by a random generator is Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan. And I was excited about this because I already love this album. And it's a very important album because it's the first album that's seen Bob Dylan plug in. So half of the album's electric and the other half is acoustic. So it's a very important album in the evolution of folk rock. And one of the highlights on the album is Maggie's Farm, which is a song that Dylan notoriously performed at the Newport Folk Festival when he first chose to plug in. And also, Rage Against the Machine does a really cool kick ass version that I love as well. But there's a number of other highlights on this album. For example, there's excellent bookends. It opens with the proto rapping of Subterranean Homesick Blues, which also features an iconic music video, and it closes with the gorgeous It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. But there's a number of other classic tunes as well. Like you got Love Minus Zero, you got Mr. Tambourine Man, you got the epic It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, which also features some really good proto rapping lyrical flow as well. And then I also really love Bob Dylan's 115th Dream, which is kind of surreal and absurd at the same time. So I also get a kick out of that too. So yeah, it's just an absolute classic album, and it's 5 stars. Well, today's album, selected by the random generator, is Green by R.E.M., released in 1988. So I am an R.E.M. fan, and this is an album that I was already familiar with. And it's an album that I already really enjoyed. And someone else who's an R.E.M. fan is a fan of this album is Kurt Cobain. So this album made Kurt Cobain's top 50 albums list that appeared in his journal. So it's considered one of the albums that helped influence Nirvana's sound. So this is the band's major label debut. And at the time, there was some critics that accused the band, maybe more fans than critics, but there were some allegations of selling out, which I disagree with because there is definitely experimental elements musically on this album. But part of the reason for the selling out, other than the fact that they were signed now to Warner Brothers, it does include a Stand, which is one of the band's more commercial tunes, and it's my least favorite song on the album. It's kind of catchy, but it's also kind of annoying, so I'm not really a fan of the song. But the rest of the album is excellent. So the opening track, Pop Song 89, which is actually a parody of a dumb pop song, but it also includes some other highlights, like my favorite song on the album, World Leader Pretend, gorgeous too, and it also features some insightful social commentary. And Michael Stipes doesn't always get the credit he deserves for his socially conscious lyrics. Another gem, Orange Crush, which is about Agent Orange, which was used during Vietnam. A catchy song that also is socially aware. I also love I Remember California, gorgeous tune. I also like Untitled, so I like the hidden track on physical copies. But yeah, the entire album is a solid, excellent album, and I had it at 4.5 stars. Album selected by the random generator is Elephant by the White Stripes, released in 2003. And I love the White Stripes, and I love this album before it was selected. And the White Stripes really came at a time where mainstream rock music was almost like it was on life support. It was very stale and generic, and the White Stripes just breathed new life into it. So it's like they resurrected a dying corpse. So yeah, this album opens with the iconic Seven Nation Army, but the whole album, it's just all kill no fill. So there's a number of tunes that showcase Jack Wright's genius as a guitarist. So there's like kick-ass tunes like Black Math, Ball and Biscuit, The Hardest Button to Button, Little Acorns. But the album also features different layers. So there's also a few songs that shows the tender side to the band as well. Like there's a trio of songs in the cold, cold night. I want to be the boy to warm your mother's heart. You got her in your pocket. Like I said, that kind of shows that tenderness. So shows a different aspect of the band as well. And one of those songs in the cold, cold night also features lead vocals from Meg Wright. And she does have a very pretty voice. And it's actually a shame that she doesn't sing more on White Stripes albums. So yeah, I have all the love and respect for Meg Wright, and I definitely won't tolerate any Meg Wright slander. And then there's the closing track. It is true that we love one another, which is a fun, playful tune. It also features vocals from Holly Golightly, which I believe is the only time that a White Stripes song has featured a vocalist that wasn't either Jack or Meg. And that song also features vocals from Meg as well. So it's like a playful interplay between the three of them. But yeah, the entire album, excellent album. Like I said, I'll kill no filler. 5 stars. Love this album. Today's randomly selected album is Achtung Baby by U2, released in 1991. So this is another album that I was already familiar with. In recent years, the legacy of U2 has been tarnished. There seems to be a couple of reasons for that. Like one, Bono, he sometimes comes across as a bit unsufferable and self-righteous. And then also there still seems to be people that were really annoyed back when U2, they had an album that just happened to pop up on people's iPhones. I didn't have an iPhone, but I do remember I used to use iTunes for my digital music library. But it sounds like I might be in the minority. I was perfectly happy to receive a free U2 album and I actually thought it was a half decent album. Getting back to this album, it's good to remember that there was a time where U2 was widely regarded as a damn good rock band, and this is a damn good album. So the album has really strong bookends, and it opens with Zoo Station, which is a bit more experimental, almost like broken on purpose, which is has a really cool vibe about it, and it's a good indicator that this isn't necessarily going to be a typical U2 album. So if this being the 90s, it was really good that the band was trying to branch out and really expand their sound. So that was kind of cool. The closing tune was the absolutely gorgeous Love is Blindness, which is my absolute favorite song on this album. And Jack Wright also does a really gorgeous version of it as well. So this is an example of an album where my favorite songs on the album, all the deep cuts or relative deep cuts. Not that I don't necessarily mind the hits, like I don't mind today's randomly generated album is Aftermath by the Rolling Stones, released in 1966. So there's actually two different versions, the UK version and the US version. And it is the UK version that appears in the book, but I did decide to listen to both. So I'll briefly discuss both of the different versions. So the one big difference is on the US version, the opening track is painted black. So it's kind of unfortunate that's not on the other version because Painted Black's probably my second all-time favorite Rolling Stones song after Give Me Shelter. The UK version opens with Mother's Little Helper, which also happens to be my favorite song on the UK version, and it's not on the US version. So that's also a little bit unfortunate that you can't have an album that has both Painted Black and Mother's Little Helper. Like that would be like really awesome. The US version has 11 songs and the UK version has 14 songs. So that's another reason why I actually prefer the US version. So not only do you have Painted Black, but there's less fill because out of those extra songs, the only one that I would say is non-fill is Mother's Little Helper. So now we'll discuss the songs that appear on both albums. So my least favorite song on both of the albums is Going Home, which is over 11 minutes and it's a slog to get through. So first off, the song's just way too long. But I don't think the song even needs to be on either album. So, for example, if you remove that song from both albums, you could put Painted Black on the one version, and then you could put Mother's Little Helper on the other version. And then a couple of other songs that appear on both versions. We got Lady Jane, which is a really beautiful song. And just an interesting note about Lady Jane in the Neil Young song Bored Tunes. That is the song that Neil Young took from the Rolling Stones because he was too wasted to write his own. And then a couple of other songs that appeared on both is the song Stupid Girl and Under My Thumb. Both of those songs could be perceived as misogynistic. In the case of Stupid Girl, it's not a very good song to begin with. In the case of Under My Thumb, I actually do like the song. But I think one perspective you can take that song when you actually listen to the lyrics, both the man and the woman both treat each other pretty crappy. And to me, the song almost comes across as talking about toxic relationships. The album is significant because this is the first album where the band have composed all of their own songs, where previous albums basically heavily relied on covers. And this album starts to deviate a bit from the blues-based sound, and it also experimented with different instrumentations, and a lot of that had to deal with 27 Club member Brian Jones. Like he was heavily involved with the musical direction. So yeah, there was definite moments on this album of musical genius, but there was also moments where the album was a little slog to get through. So as I mentioned, I prefer the US version partly because of less fill and painted black. So the US version I'll give 3.5 stars to. The UK version was a bit okay, but it dragged, was a bit long, and there was some fill, and like I said, no painted black. So the UK version I give 3 stars to. So hopefully that's not a hot take, and I'll apologize to fans of the Rolling Stones. So today's randomly generated album is My Aim is True by Elvis Costello, released in 1977. So this is an album I was already familiar with, but it has been a while since I listened to it. But I do like Elvis Costello, and I do like this album. So overall, it's a pretty solid debut. And even though the album sometimes gets linked in with being like punk or new wave, and there's some elements of it, to me, it's more of a straightforward 50s, 60s style rock album. And there's like some elements like rockabilly and then some elements of garage rock, or even some of the garage rock. I think during the 70s, a lot of that was kind of now getting lumped in with pub rock, which had elements of that as well. But yeah, I would say my favorite songs on the album are the more well-known tunes. Like my absolute favorite song on the album is Allison, which is a very emotional, heartfelt tune, which also adds a different dynamic to the album. But I also really enjoy The Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes, Less Than Zero. And I also like Watching the Detectives, which is the closing track on the US version. But I do like a couple of the deep cuts. Like I enjoy the edginess of I'm Not Angry, Waiting for the End of the World is also a solid song. And in reality, I would say there's not much in the way of fill on this album, so I at least like all of the songs. So it is a really solid album. The only reason why my final rating's not going to be higher is because I like all the songs, but I'm not sure I necessarily love any of them. But it's a very easy album to listen to. It's a satisfying listening experience, and I would have no problem listening to it again. So I give the album 4 stars to find out. So today's randomly generated album is Don't Come Home a Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind from Loretta Lynn, released in 1967. I must admit, I'm not necessarily a country music fan, but I do like some country music, and I do respect Loretta Lynn, and she does have some songs I like. Like I do like the song "Success Has Made a Failure of Our Home," which I first heard because Sinead O'Connell covered it. Also on my website, ongoinghistoryofprotestsongs.com, I feature the song The Pill, which is a protest song about women's reproductive rights. And it was a really bold, gutsy song for her to record, especially in light of the fact that this was during the 70s and country music radio tended to be conservative. And then also I enjoyed the album that was produced by Jack Wright, Vanlia Rose. So I do have a lot of respect for Loretta Lynn. But this album is an album I've never listened to before. The only song I was familiar with was the opening title track, Don't Come Home a Drinkin', with Lovin' on Your Mind. And I do enjoy that song, and that's by far the best song on the album. And that's part of the issue with the album is nothing else measures up to the high standards set by that track. So the rest of the album, it gets a little bit repetitive and one note, and all the songs are just variations of similar themes. The only other song that I kind of like on the album is the song Got What You Got and Go, which is a little bit rollicking and has a bit of a rockabilly feel. And I partly like that because it's a bit of a contrast with the rest of the album. So it kind of just changes the mood up a bit and makes things a little bit less mundane. So yeah, overall the album falls a little bit flat for me, but a lot of that, like I mentioned, is just simply a fact that this music's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. So because of that, I don't want to be too harsh. So I'm gonna give the rated 3.5 stars because it does need to be acknowledged. Loretta Lynn has a gorgeous voice and the musicianship is competent, it's solid. Plus, like I said, the opening and title track is a classic tune. So yeah, I have nothing but love and respect for Loretta Lynn. So this concludes my reviews of the first 7 randomly generated albums. So just as an update, my favorite album so far is The White Stripes Elephant at 5 stars, followed by Bob Dylan's Bringing It Back Home, also at 5 stars. Achtung Baby by U2 at 4.5 stars. Green by R.E.M, also at 4.5 stars. My Aim Is True by Elvis Costello at 4 stars. Don't Come Home a Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind, Loretta Lynn, 3.5 stars. And then Aftermath by the Rolling Stones at 3 stars. And just as a note, for the Rolling Stones, as I mentioned in the video, this is for the UK edition that appeared in the book. So if I was including the US edition, I actually prefer the US version of this album. I'd put it ahead of Loretta Lynn. So just a few observations. So first, I just want to mention out of the 7 albums I reviewed, 5 of them I previously have listened to before. So there's only 2 new listens, but I'm suspecting as I continue with this exercise, there's no doubt it's going to be more new listens, and I'm looking forward to potentially being introduced to new albums that I haven't listened to before. And then the other question is, do these albums deserve to be on the list? So the first thing I must say when they say you must hear before you die, obviously that's the epitome of hyperbole or the epitome of hyperbole. So it is obviously an exaggeration because you could live a perfectly happy life if you don't listen to any of these albums. But I think it does raise the question, do these albums deserve inclusion on a list like this? And as far as these first 7 albums go, I would say yes. Because even an album like my least favorite album on this list, Aftermath by the Rolling Stones, the Rolling Stones will go on to record much better albums. But this album was a very important, significant album in the evolution of the band. So in that sense, I think it does deserve inclusion. Or even something like I said, Loretta Lynn, it's out of my wheelhouse, but she is the queen of country music. I don't know how this ranks among country aficionados. If this is considered one of her better albums, but I could see why it could be considered significant. So yeah, I think so far I've been fairly fortunate that I haven't stumbled upon a really bad album that kind of leaves me scratching my head about how could this make a list like this, but I know that's going to eventually come. So yeah, if you want me to continue making these videos, please like and subscribe. So I'm going to continue posting these as shorts on a daily basis, and then I'll do my weekly recap. And I also made a playlist to curate all these shorts. So kind of put it all in an easy to digest format. So please let me know in the comments what you think of these 7 albums. So which albums did you like? Which albums did you dislike? Which albums do you think deserve to make the list? Which albums didn't? Do you think any of my takes were spicy? Do you think I'm dumb? Do you want to yell at me in the comments in a respectful way? Please do so. So once again, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Oh, forgot something, shameless plug. Check out the website, Ongoing History, protestsongs.com. Gotta get the shameless plugs in. Thanks for watching, and please stay safe.